Hello, my name is Dan Holme. I'm an Office 365 MVP and the co-founder of IT Unity. Recently, Microsoft announced that Office 365 channels are now available on IFT, also known as If This, Then That. In this video, I'm going to show you a fairly advanced way to use IFT to save pages you've cached in Pocket as PDFs in OneDrive for archival purposes. Now, this recipe is already available for you on IFT. The URL is shown here. It's recipe 310170. If for some reason I've updated the recipe, simply search for Pocket, PDF, and OneDrive, or search for my name, Dan Holme. But if you want to learn how to create this recipe yourself, and on the way, really master not only IFT, but also third-party APIs that can be used to convert any web page to PDF, then you're in for a treat with this video. Before you dive into the creation of the recipe, I do recommend you watch the other videos in this series first. You can access each of these at itunity.com/danholme. Those will give you a foundation. Once you have that foundation, or if you're already a fairly familiar user with IFT, you're ready to dive in to create this recipe. IFT, or If This, Then That, is a popular web service that allows you to connect two other web services so that together they do something that neither does on its own. IFT watches one service, and if something happens, then it does something in that other service. In this scenario, we're going to connect Pocket and OneDrive. Pocket is a popular web-based application that can be used for saving web pages for reading later, even reading offline. OneDrive, which is part of Microsoft's Office 365 suite, is an online storage location. So we're going to create a solution that allows me to take a page that I've read in Pocket and really liked and save it as a PDF in OneDrive. Let's step through the scenario before we build the solution. Assume I just discovered a great blog entry on Office Blogs telling me that Office 365 channels are now live on IFT. I might want to save this for reading later. Now, depending on the application I'm using right now, there are lots of different ways to send this page to Pocket. I'm using Chrome, and Chrome has an add-in for Pocket up here in the very upper right corner. So if I simply click Save to Pocket, that page gets saved. Now, if I go to the Pocket website, we see that that page is now part of my list. And there's lots of other ways to access and read your list. There are Pocket apps for iOS and Android, for example. And those apps will also download items from your list and keep them for offline reading. So I could read this article when I was on the train on the way to work, for example. So we've got a web page that gets saved to Pocket. Now, what if I really like an article and I want to save it for the future? What I want to build now is a solution where I can tag an article and by tagging it, save it to my OneDrive for Business. I've even created a little folder in my OneDrive called Pocket. So I want to save a PDF of that article in my Pocket folder of OneDrive. Because web pages change over time, and web pages disappear, and I might want to preserve this article for the future. So at this point, if I were to state my goal as an if this, then that statement, if I tag a page, then save it to OneDrive. Sounds pretty easy. But there's a catch. Pocket saves web pages. When you ask for stuff from Pocket, it gives you web pages. OneDrive saves files. And there's actually a difference. So we have to convert the web page to a file format before we save it to OneDrive. So I might need to restate my goal. If I tag a page, then save it as a PDF to OneDrive, for example. So we just need a way to convert a web page to a PDF. How do we do that? Enter a third service, Convert API. You may have heard of OneDrive and you may have heard of Pocket, but you might not have heard of Convert API. It does exactly what its name implies. It converts things from one format to another. You can go up to www.convertapi and learn more. In this case, what's important is it converts web pages to PDFs. So go to Convert API and sign up for an account. It's free, and you'll be given 500 credits with which you can do conversions. You'll also be given, very importantly, a unique API key. This is like your account number with Convert API. It's unique to you and you shouldn't share it with anyone. Once you have those pieces of information, you're almost ready to start creating the recipe in IFT. But you need one more piece of information, and that is the URL that you will use to convert a web page to PDF using Convert API. The URL is this one, http://do.convertapi.com/web to PDF. Then there's a question mark, and everything after the question mark are variables, are information we are feeding Convert API, including how long we will give the conversion, 60 seconds in this case, which is plenty long, and your API key. So where you see the red italics that say your API key, you'll actually put your API key in there. And finally, a variable or parameter as it's called that points to the URL of the page you're trying to convert. So this long URL, which will all be on one line, you could theoretically type it into your address bar, will take a web page and send it to convertapi.com, convert it to PDF using your API key as the credential. If you've never used a web service or API before, I highly recommend you give it a test drive before trying to build your IFT recipe. Take this URL and replace the two variables. Put your API key in the right place and put a URL to a real web page at the end. Now, of course, the API key I'm showing here is just a sample. It's not an active API key. You would need to put in yours. Once you've created the URL, paste it into your browser and press enter. After a few moments, notice my browser is prompting me to download a PDF. This is the converted PDF. I'm going to go ahead and open it directly, and notice this is the home page of itunity.com as a PDF. So we put in a URL that called Convert API. Convert API went to the home page of iTunity, converted it to a PDF, and credited that conversion against my free account using my API key. Pretty interesting, huh? Now, you don't necessarily have to understand all of this. The main thing is you have to create your account, you have to get your API key, and you have to know this URL that's on the screen right now. That will come back and help us when we're in the middle of creating our recipe on IFT. So now we have all the pieces we need. We have Pocket saving web pages, Convert API converting web pages to PDF, and OneDrive saving files. So now, if I tag a page, then I can save it as PDF to OneDrive. The IFT recipe will look something like this. If in Pocket I tag a page, then we're going to convert it to PDF and save it to OneDrive. Now, you might remember from earlier discussions about IFT that IFT really only connects two services, but we're going to do something that's a little tricky here and inject Convert API in the middle of the process. We're now ready to create our recipe on IFT. I've logged onto IFT and I'm on my My Recipes page. I click Create Recipe and I'm asked to define this being our trigger channel and trigger. In this case, our channel is Pocket. So I pick Pocket as the channel, and then I get to choose the trigger. Now there's several different triggers that are available to us with Pocket. We can look for any new item, an item that is tagged, an item that's favorited, or an item that's archived. I'm going to go ahead and pick the item tagged option. And when I choose that option, I can pick the tag that I'm going to look for in the trigger. You can make up any tag you want, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to use the tag PDF. I'll tag an article PDF if I want to save it as a PDF to my OneDrive. I click Create Trigger, and we've now defined the if side of the statement. If in Pocket a new item is tagged PDF, then what? Well, then we're going to take an action. And the action channel in this case is going to be OneDrive for Business. And the only action that OneDrive exposes is the ability to add a file from a URL. So IFT is going to tell OneDrive to go to a URL, grab a file, and save it. Where is it going to save it? That's the folder path. And I've created a folder in my OneDrive called Pocket, so that's where we'll keep it. What is the file name going to be? Well, the file name can be the title of the item as it is in Pocket, but there's one very, very, very important trick here, and that is you need to add .pdf. Without the extension, you'll have extensionless files that won't know which application to open up in. So there is a little bit of a trick there. The biggest trick, though, is the URL. What URL are we going to send OneDrive to find the file that we're saving? Remember the Convert API URL? It's a long one, and it has a lot of parameters or variables that we're feeding Convert API, but there's only two really important ones, your API key and the URL of the page you're trying to convert. Your API key is what you got when you created your account on Convert API. So you can replace your API key with your API key. And no, that's not my API key. I made it up, so don't try and use it. The other parameter that you'll replace is the URL. And in this case, we're going to use an IFT ingredient to point to the URL in Pocket that caused the trigger. So this is exactly what you need to paste into the URL box in your recipe. So in the URL box, I paste that exact URL. It is all one line, although it wraps within the box. And again, the API key needs to be your unique API key. Because this is a sample, I'm going to pause the video for just a moment, insert my API key, and click Create Action. Now all that's left is to give our recipe a good descriptive title. That's a pretty good descriptive title. If an item in Pocket is tagged PDF, convert the item to PDF and save it to the Pocket folder in OneDrive for Business. We're all done. I click Create Recipe, and we are notified that the recipe is created. Now let's test the recipe. Here's that blog entry that I want to save. I'm going to click Save to PDF, and I'm going to tag it as PDF. That's all that really needs to be done. But just to confirm what's happening here, I'm going to go back to Pocket. I'm going to see the article that got added and confirm that in fact it did get tagged. And now we just simply have to sit back and wait for the IFT recipe to run. IFT recipes run on a schedule, but if I'm impatient or I'm trying to test this recipe, I can click Check Recipe Now, and the recipe will then be executed manually. This one may take a few moments because it's having to go out to Convert API to actually convert that page to PDF. But it didn't take too long. I'm told the recipe was checked, and if I go to the log for the recipe, we can see that the recipe was in fact triggered, meaning it detected the newly tagged item and ran the recipe. And so we should be able to go to my OneDrive for Business Pocket folder, and sure enough, the Office 365 Channels document is there, and it looks like it's even a PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, which in my browser opens up directly, and we can see the PDF of the saved document. It worked exactly as we wanted. So let's summarize what we've done in this fairly advanced use of IFT. If in Pocket I tag an item, specifically as PDF, that creates a trigger, and IFT then goes to OneDrive and tells OneDrive to save a file. But the URL that IFT passes OneDrive is not the URL directly to Pocket. Instead, it's a URL that tells OneDrive to go to Convert API. Convert API then goes to Pocket, grabs the page, converts it to PDF, and hands it back to OneDrive. And OneDrive saves the resulting file to the specified folder. Hopefully you've enjoyed this opportunity to learn how to create a fairly advanced recipe with IFT, and also the opportunity to learn how APIs like Convert API work. If you want to save yourself a lot of time and you don't want to create this recipe yourself, you can actually find it on IFT. The URL is right here. And in case I ever change this recipe, you can simply search for Pocket, PDF, and OneDrive. On behalf of everyone at IT Unity, where we strive to help you solve your business problems with technology, thanks for watching this video. If you want to find more of my videos and articles, join me at itunity.com/Dan Holme.